Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at Hawk Blogger. And we are back for another sunny summer day here as the Seahawks power through training camp. I think today will be, I want to say, day 8 of training camp. And eager to see what the coach has in store today, given that he surprised folks yesterday by having a walkthrough after 2 days of padded practice. Gave the guys a little bit of a physical day off, but a mental rep. And I give credit to Bob Condata because I hadn't heard this yet, but apparently Mike Macdonald has a name for these days, and I think it's called ACT. Yes, it's called ACT. He calls these alignment, communication, and technique days. So I could see that. They were working through things at a very slow pace, slow motion kind of pace, offense, defense, situationally. It's certainly not the most gripping thing to watch. There's not a lot to report on. You wouldn't say somebody made a good play because they're literally like slow motioning through, but it's interesting just to see how Mike's coaching, how he's approaching it, and it'll be interesting to see if that is a jump forward. I am going to play some sound for you from Coach Macdonald's press conference the day prior, where he had a lot of things that were pretty interesting to say. I'm not going to play it all for a variety of reasons, but some of the sound there, I think, gave some indications about why he may have chose an ACT day yesterday, but it's up to you also to interpret. Before I get into all that, I just want to welcome all of our YouTube members, our Patreon members. I see Caleb Epp in there. Good morning to you. It is a great time to join. I think we've got at least 5 new folks that have joined since I kind of put the challenge out there, seeing if we could get 50 new either Patreon members or YouTube members, either one, the combination total. If we can do that, then I think I can make it work to start covering some road games. And I think hopefully that's a good thing for all of you. I think it would be great to get some more behind the scenes, be able to ask questions, get to know some folks on the road. Would love to get some more people as part of this community. So would love to have you join. What I wanted to take some time with today is go through some sound from the last 2 days, primarily the Mike Macdonald sound, because I thought there was some really good tidbits in there. And then I've got a little bit from Devon Witherspoon. I think that was good. And some from D.K. And, I have some involvement in the DK stuff that it'd be, I'll share kind of my perspective, but it was interesting kind of to see how he was handling himself yesterday during the press conference. So we'll talk about all that, and then we'll get you out of here, and I will see you guys later in the day for my instant camp report and all that good stuff. So lots of good stuff coming your way. If you haven't already given the show a like and click subscribe, would appreciate it. Let's get right to it. So first thing I wanted to share is some of this sound from Mike Macdonald. And the first thing here is a question I asked him about the fact. I basically said, hey, analytics are a big part of the NFL right now. And I wanted to get a feel from him how he was going to use analytics and data in his decision-making as a head coach, and especially on fourth down, because there's a lot of reasons I was curious about this. One is that I don't think that the Pete Carroll coaching staff utilized analytics as much as I would have hoped they would have, or were as in command of that data as I would hope they would be. And that does not mean I think the coaches should just do exactly what data says all the time, because I actually don't believe that. But I do think it is critical to have the latest data at your fingertips in order to be able to make more informed decisions And I think the fourth down decision making was pretty bad most of the time with Pete Carroll. And I think it can be better. And so I was kind of curious how Mike Macdonald, who has like I think he's got an accounting, he's got like a data, like a numbers background. I was curious how he's going to respond. Here's how he responded to my question about using analytics and approaching fourth down. Like fourth down.
Yeah. Well, good data is good data, and you want to be able to let that drive a lot of your decisions. But there is a human element as well in real time, and those will drive kind of how we game plan throughout the week, how we communicate, how the players expect us to call things. But we do want to be aggressive, so we do have. But in order to do that, you have to be good at those situations. So we need to be a good short yardage team. We need to be able to move people off the ball. We need to be able to operate, and so those are things that you're going to consider in those situations.
So good clip there from Macdonald, and he kind of check for me in kind of how he answered that question, because what he said there was, you want to have good data. And anyone that's been involved with data knows that it's not enough to have analytics or have data at your fingertips. It is so easy to have misleading analytics, bad content, bad analytics. And so one of the first things is clean data, good data. So there's some indication that he knows what he's talking about there. It's not just a matter of, parroting back something that he's heard. He knows what he's talking about. And then he talked about the fact that they have to earn their way, that they have to show that they're good in short yardage situations, that they can make those things, that they can actually get there. And that also that there's a human element that he's going to have to assess. But sounds like analytics are going to be a part of how Mike approaches that. And we'll get to see that he wants to be aggressive, which I think is a good sign. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway from that. This next clip is Coach Macdonald talking about Tariq Woolen and what he's seen from him so far. This one's an interesting one. You got to watch and listen. There's a pretty pregnant pause at one point, and I want to talk about that after he answers. What do you think about Tariq Woolen so far?
I see iron sharpening iron out there when he's going against the Wild, especially D.K. But just someone that's on a mission, and he's responding to the coaching, and he's bought in, and I think the players are excited about him. So I don't want to oversell it right now, but I think you can sense our excitement about it.
Did you hear that? There was a very long pause. You could just see him kind of deciding how he wanted to handle this. But he's excited. He's excited about the way Tariq Woolen's playing. And that pause, since I've had a chance to kind of observe Coach Macdonald at a number of these press conferences now, he really does not want to hype up any of the players, get them too high or too low or whatever. And that was him basically being pretty excited about how Woolen's playing and not wanting to say that. And that's good news. So yeah, I think the whole iron sharpening iron, you're going to hear that from everybody. Iron sharpening iron, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I will probably say it. So, take it for what it's worth. But my honest read is, if there's ever been an example of that, it is what's going on with Woolen and Metcalf day in, day out. The two of them are raising the level of each other. I think Metcalf especially has been playing so well that Woolen has had to step up, and he has. It's fantastic to see Tariq Woolen, who's kind of this happy-go-lucky, affable, lighthearted kind of guy, be competitive in that way and want to be good enough to win that matchup. And he has. Not every time, but the percentage has gone up quite a bit. So Woolen is one of the biggest stories of this camp, for sure. I see a comment from one of our YouTube members, Noah Berman, says, Morning, Brian. Thanks for the early show on my commute. Hey, I'm happy to do it. Glad that it is the right time for you. Yeah, so that was a pretty, I thought, a pretty cool moment from Mike Macdonald talking about Tariq Woolen. Now this next answer is to another question that I asked Mike, and this one, I am trying to intentionally help us learn about Mike Macdonald's coaching philosophies and how they might be different than Pete's without putting him on the defensive or feeling like he's being compared, because that's not what I want. I just want to know how he thinks about it. And so what's one of the things we heard from Pete Carroll over and over again? Can you win a game in the first quarter? Can you win the game in the second quarter? It's all about the finish. It's all about the finish. And generally, I think emphasizing something is important, because if you emphasize everything, it's a little harder. But I think one of Pete's flaws for many years was that the team did not start fast, whether it was in a season or in a game. And I think the lack of emphasis or the lack of ability to do that made things more challenging than they needed to be. So I wanted to kind of get a read from Mike Macdonald. I said, hey, some coaches emphasize starting fast. Some coaches emphasize finishing strong. Is there a part of the game that you as coach are going to emphasize for your team? And here's what he said.
Well, you need to start fast and you have to close the game out. So
well, let me put it up on screen so you can see. Sorry, folks. Let's try that again.
Well, you need to start fast and you have to close the game out. So and then you want to extend the lead in the middle. So, John Harbaugh said, hey, the game's either going to happen one of two ways. Either we're going to start the game with a lead or start the game, behind. So how you respond to those situations, and then ultimately how you close games out. Situational football is obviously a big part of that. Mentality, how you play the game. Again, those are all things that we're trying to train throughout this camp. That's why it's set up the way it is.
Yeah, so I thought it was interesting to hear. My major takeaway there is, no, I'm not going to emphasize one part of the game. They all matter. And what, if anything, his emphasis is be good in situational football, be mentally strong to be able to handle it if you're ahead or you're behind, and just focus on the process, not as much this kind of meta concept of whether you start fast or finish strong. If there's any part that he was emphasizing a little bit more, it was the finishing, but I don't think enough that he's going to make that a mantra for the team. So as of right now, that's a pretty big difference between Pete Carroll and how his philosophy and Mike Macdonald. Don't know how meaningful that will be in the season or over his tenure, but I think we learned a little bit there about Mike Macdonald and appreciated his answer to that question. Next thing here was I'd asked him, I noticed that Julian Love had a title belt in the previous day, and then Charles Cross was walking off the field with one today, and no one had asked him about this yet. So I wanted to know what was going on with these title belts. And here Mike Macdonald was answering that question. He was, I think, pretty happy about, I think he was pretty happy about these title belts. Here you go.
And why Charles Cross earned it today?
Yeah. Shout out to Gino. I was talking offense won the game, and he said that give it to an old lineman. Charles been having a great camp. The belts is something that's kind of fun to just kind of mix it up and spice it up throughout camp of who's holding the belt, and then we can kind of change the criteria of how you challenge it. We got a bunch of them. DK's done a great job they're like legitimate belts. They're kind of heavy. They're pretty sweet looking, but I think the guys get excited about it, and it means something to carry that thing around for the building for a day or two. As you're the 3 not around champion right now, as the offense is, which is pretty cool.
So I love that. One, if Dana O'Gorman's listening out there, love you, Dana. Dana's talked about the fact that maybe he's like not the most fun football coach. Maybe we talked about Alyssa Charleston last night on Real Hawk Talk, was like, he's a little stoic. You could see like he's fun loving though too. And he thinks this is pretty fun and cool, and he loves that the guys are into it. And while, I mean, maybe being the most lighthearted is not the way he's wired, which is fine by me. He wants it to be, he's not just like a taskmaster, wants no fun, no smile. I mean, the guy, he wants to infuse some competition and some pride in the players, and he's pretty happy about this. And he likes these belts, and he thinks it's fun. And I think it's pretty cool. And I do see the players, like, they're carrying it around. They walk around, and he mentions later that there's more belts that haven't yet been revealed. And so, like, I appreciate when a leader puts that kind of thought into creating an environment that, you know, breeds some camaraderie and competition among the team. So I thought that was pretty cool, and enjoyed hearing that from him. Big news here. I want to welcome Ruben Navarro. We've got another new YouTube member. It's so great to have you, Ruben. Thank you for joining. And, you know, that is one more. We're getting closer to where I will be able to cover road games for you. So please, more YouTube members, more Patreon members at patreon.com/hawkblogger. Would love to add more folks to the family. Welcome to you, Ruben. Great to have you aboard. So yeah, I thought that was a cool little moment from Mike Macdonald. And then the last thing I'm going to play here from Mike Macdonald, question I asked him at the end, which was, hey, if you were giving advice to a rookie, if someone wanted to, I think the way I worded it is, if somebody wanted to know how best to earn your respect, get your attention as a coach when trying to make this roster, what advice would you give that player? And here's how Coach Macdonald responded.
Just play hard as crap, man, every snap.
Sorry, guys. Let me put it up on screen. I keep forgetting to do that. And let me rewind. There we go.
Play hard as crap, man, every snap. Just, you know, play like the way we expect people to play. We know that in-house, you know, without using all the crazy language, but they know what it looks like.
So I kind of love that. I mean, for him, it is how hard you play. And I think, I mean, he's talked about that in his coach's clinic that he spoke at. He's talked about it like, I don't know, I have to remember what it was, like uncommon effort or obnoxious effort. Like, he's had all these different like words for it, but it's really how hard your team plays, how hard the player plays. And I think all of us can get behind that. Like, if you have a team that is just flying around, it's an easy team to cheer for. We didn't always have that the last couple of years. There have been players that have made business decisions. There's been moments where multiple guys just watch something happen, or it just doesn't feel like top effort. So I think it was cool to hear that from Mike Macdonald. And, you know, not that it was the most insightful thing for him to say, but I did appreciate, you know, that was his emphasis. All right. Next thing I wanted to share with you guys is some sound from yesterday where Devin Witherspoon and D.K. Metcalf were speaking. And this first one is a question I asked Devon Witherspoon about how this team can improve on third downs. And I'll play this for you. Hold on.
Mike Macdonald. That's how you correct that.
Quick answer. Now, if you didn't understand what he said Coach Mike Macdonald. Not the most insightful answer, but, you know, it's also an indication of the player's belief and trust that this is a guy that's gonna lead them. So Spoon is kind of an interesting person in these press conferences. He's not the same like dynamic personality that he is on the practice field. And Not sure why that is, but it is kind of interesting just seeing how much more reserved he is in front of the microphone. This next question, though, that I wanted to, or answer I wanted to share is, he was asked kind of like, what do you like about this defense? How is it going to help accentuate your skill set? And here's what he said. I thought this was a pretty good answer.
You don't know what we're going to be running at the time. So it might look like one thing and be another. Then it might look like something and actually be that. But you'll never know at the time. So I think that's one of the biggest things about it. And it's just very creative. So
what Spoon says there is that, you just never know what we're going to be in. It might look like one thing and then we're in another. And we've heard about this, but it's something that I think the players are working toward, but I think they're going to take pride in feeling like what they're doing is hard for an offense to deal with. And, I appreciated that from Spoon there. I also just quick aside, if you're like, why is the sound for these videos that I'm playing only coming out of one channel, one ear, or whatever, one speaker? Little editing faux pas. I will get that fixed for future things, but hopefully you guys are still able to hear it, even if it's a little awkward being out of just mono channel for today. All right, last thing from Spoon. There wasn't a ton from Spoon, but there was some. Last thing I wanted to play from Spoon was, I thought, some cool sound about. I asked him who's like kind of stepped forward on offense from last year that's playing at a different level than they were a year ago. And here is what Devon Witherspoon said about that.
I think the biggest person is probably Gino. The way he's been playing lately is just out of his mind. Like all the throws, all the keys, the checks that he's making, like he's very on point right now, and it's just kind of making it hard for him. But he's really making it hard for us as well. So yeah.
From what you.
So that was Devin Witherspoon talking about Geno Smith and how he is playing elite football and making it very hard on them. He's making all the checks. We just continue, like every single person, myself, observers, players, coaches, Geno Smith's having a camp. He is playing at a different level than he's played before, and he's having to because the defense is playing at a different level than it's played for a while. So it was great to hear that from Devin Witherspoon. I appreciated and respected the kudos he gave his quarterback, and I don't think he was giving it to him just to blow smoke. I think it's real. I think they are being challenged by the way Geno Smith is playing, and that's a good thing. All right, let's flip. It's a good segue to talk about what DK said, and DK was kind of then talking about the other side of the ball and who's kind of playing well over there. And here's what DK had to say about Tariq Woolen.
No, I mean, he's always getting better year by year, whether that's mentally or physically. I mean, it's always a good matchup going against one of the best corners in the league, at practice. It just makes it easier on Sunday going against, opposing DB. So I think he is growing. Like you said, it's his third year, looking to make more strides than he did, his rookie year and his second year in the league.
Yeah, DK giving some credit to Woolen, and we started with Mike Macdonald talking about Tariq Woolen and DK, who's going against him every day. I mean, there's definitely respect there, and those two guys are going to keep battling. So it was really good, good to hear that from DK. Now, this next one we'll talk about a bit. I asked a question of DK, basically saying, hey, last year it came out that Kyle Shanahan intentionally told his players to target you in order to get a response. How do you handle that without hurting your team? And I gotta say, I didn't love the way I phrased the question. That wasn't the kind of approach I wanted. And so as soon as I said it, I was like, he's gonna feel defensive. Because like the way I phrased it puts it on him. Like, how is he going to not hurt his team? What I really was trying to get at is like, how do you handle like bullshit like that, where there's a coach doing dirty things, and how do you handle that? And I think there was better ways I could ask the question. Like, if I could do it again, I would say like, how do you handle dirty coaching like that from opponents? And how, you know, if other coaches do that, how are you going to handle that this year? That would have put the onus on like, these guys are doing something crappy. How are you going to handle it? Would have been a better way to phrase it. That would have been hopefully less triggering. And I think that there's another way I thought about asking it is like, you know, if that happened to one of your teammates, like one of your rookie teammates, what advice would you give them on how to handle it? Those would have all been better ways to ask that question that wouldn't have been as triggering. You could see it. You're going to see it in his eyes. He did not really appreciate this question. And I will say this before I share the clip. It's a totally legitimate question. It's also not that hard of a question to answer. He could have very easily just said, hey, I'm going to handle that on the field, or, you know, I'm not going to worry about that stuff. I'm just going to play my game. It didn't have to be something that got him angry, but he was already kind of chippy. There had been some questions about like, what do you think about joint practices? I don't know. It's just practice. What do you think about this practice today? It was different. Well, it was different for you. So he was kind of chippy to other people. This wasn't necessarily just me, but this is his response to my question about Kyle Shanahan.
Do you respond to that without hurting your own team?
I mean, he's worried about me, and it's 10 other people on the field he needs to worry about. So he has bigger fish to fry, in my opinion.
Very subtle, you know, in terms of the body language there. But, you know, he wasn't thrilled. He wasn't thrilled with that question. I can pretty clearly, that was my interpretation, at least, being there. And I got some more indication of that later, and you'll hear about that. Next thing, I thought this was the most insightful answer we got from DK yesterday. I think it was Curtis Crabtree that asked, you know, hey, he had Sanjay Lal as a wide receiver coach that DK really appreciated. They now have Frisman Jackson. How do you feel about Frisman Jackson? And the first time DK was asked about Frisman Jackson, he didn't really have much to say and almost seemed a little bit like, yeah, he's not that great. But he had a lot more to offer this time. And so take a listen to how DK Metcalf talked about his past receiver coach in Sanjay Lal and his new one in Frisman Jackson.
Yes, sir. Both are great receiver coaches, in my opinion. You know, different approaches to the game. Frisman is more hands-on. He's teaching, you know, blocking techniques and other things that I can do within the route. And Sanjay was very technical, pre-snap, or trying to manipulate the DB. So, you know, both great in their own, you know, respective, but, you know, very two different receiver coaches.
So you heard from DK there, him kind of splitting them on post-snap, pre-snap, you know, Frisman telling him about blocking techniques, so a little bit in the run game there, apparently. And it does sound like there's been more time spent, and he's found more things about Frisman Jackson that are additive, and that he had at least more to say there. So I think that's a good news. That's a good sign. You know, nothing like major there, but Sanjay was a little bit pre-snap, it sounds like, where his emphasis was, and Frisman Jackson maybe a little bit after. So that was DK talking about receiver coaches. And then this is what I was saying, where I got some confirmation that maybe DK did not appreciate my earlier question. I asked him, like, what's one thing that you are trying to improve on from last season? Pretty innocuous question, right? And here's how he answered to close the press conference.
Trying to control what I say in the media when they don't ask me good questions. So, yeah, working on my responses there. Still needs work.
So, yeah, I mean, that could have been directed at the whole crew, at all the media, you know. It could have been directed to me. At the time, it definitely felt directed to me. And, you know, I'm in this interesting situation now where, you know, I have access to ask these questions and to talk to these players and coaches. And I'm not a media person in the same way. I'm not going to try to tell you that I'm objective, that I am not a fan, because I am a fan. And my goal is not to break some story or to do some gotcha thing where I get someone feeling defensive or uncomfortable. And like, that's just not what I'm after. I don't enjoy that. Someone else can do that. I do want to ask like substantial questions. I do want to ask questions that have potential to, there's three things really, if I just to share with you, like there's three things that I want to get out of my questions. And basically the way I will grade my questions is if one of these three things happen as a result of the answer. First thing, do I learn something about the player or the person? Like, is there something that we learn about the player or the person? And this is going to be something that's not just a generic thing or something we've heard a million times before, but do we get a little bit more insight into who this person is and what makes them tick? So that's one type of question, I like to ask. And sometimes those questions are going to be silly. I'm going to ask, I asked Devon Witherspoon, like, if you were in the Olympics, what sport would you play? And he didn't really know what to say, but like, it's kind of, I want to get them out of their shell a little bit. The second, type of question or measure of success for a question for me is, does it get you fired up as a fan? Like, there's gonna be some questions I ask where I intentionally bait the hook to say like how excited are you about, or what's it gonna feel like when, or rivalry stuff that we as fans care about. I want to try to get some red meat stuff there where you just like, you're fired up by what you hear. So that's another type of question that for me would be a successful question. And then the third would be something that helps me and the rest of us learn a little bit about the game of football and how they, an insight, a way that they approach it, a tactic, a strategy. So those are three things that like you can always know are in my head that I'm trying to use as an assessment for whether I'm doing a good job in asking my questions. And so that's why, as much as the question I asked of D.K. Metcalf was pretty legitimate, and, I think I would love D.K. to be somebody that maybe didn't feel attacked in those kind of moments and just kind of took it for what it was, but he doesn't know me yet. And he could have absolutely interpreted that as me trying to get him to say something that will get him in trouble. And so I get that. And so I grade myself kind of low on that question, but my goal is to kind of give us a deeper understanding of the people and the team that we cheer for. And so I'll keep working on that. Hopefully all of you are appreciating some of the questions I'm asking. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from people that are like, hey, it's nice to hear questions that are a little different than the standard questions that are coming out. And that's kind of my goal. So I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the support. And hopefully I have not made an enemy for life in DK Metcalf. I do not want a Joe fan, Jamal Adams relationship. I do not want to be Mr. Brian to DK Metcalf. That's not my goal. But, you can only control what you can control. So those were the big things for today that I wanted to cover. I am going to have the instant camp report for you later today. The only way you will know exactly when that's going to show up is if you subscribe to the channel and you click the bell to get notified when I go live. That's the only way you're going to know. I am hoping to get some interviews with one of the tight ends today, maybe AJ Barner, maybe Brady Russell, and that will be posted later today, assuming I'm able to talk to one of them. And, I appreciate everybody tuning in this morning. If you haven't already given the show a like and click subscribe, please do. It would be great. And if you have not listened to Real Hawk Talk last night with Alyssa Charleston from Fox 13, with Evan Hill, with Dana O'Gorman, you should. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. And it was 90 minutes. We just couldn't quite get off because we were just enjoying the time. So check that out. It's already uploaded. So, available for everyone to hear. Check that out. And then join at patreon.com/hawkblogger. We just got a new member here, Ruben. We've got a bunch of new members at Patreon. We're closing in. We're getting closer to like 10 new members. We just got to get a few more, and I'll be able to cover some road games for you all, which would be fun. So until next time, I'm Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at HawkBlogger. This has been episode 130 of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care, y'all.